Well, Esther chapter 6 is going to be one heck of a chapter if you've been following the story up to this point. So crazy what's happening. We're going to see a turn of events, a twist of fate in chapter 6. And this is going to be almost a poetic justice, if you will. So I'm looking forward to your comments on this chapter. So verse 1, on that night, so this is, remember, they had the party, the queen threw a party for the king and Haman. They had a great time. The queen threw a party the next day for the king and Haman. They did their thing. But and Haman, remember, was like, hey, I like this party. This is building my political cloud up, but I hate that I have to see Mordecai, the jerk, who doesn't worship me. And I got to do something. And so his wife and his friends convinced him to create a gallows and find an excuse to get the king to allow you to hang him, basically, and get rid of Mordecai. So in chapter 6, we see Hamath is now preparing. Next time I want to go to the day 2 of this party. Basically, I'm going to show up at the party, and I'm going to talk to the king about how to kill Mordecai. Except Hamath does not understand there's other things at work, and that's what we're going to get into. Now, verse 1. On that night, so this is the same night that Hamath has talked with his friends and his wife about what to do about Mordecai, and they decided to convince the king to let him be executed. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. Now you got to look at this, okay? One thing, obviously, the king's got some sleep problems. He can't sleep, so what do? Go get the book of the records and come read it to me. I'm sure that's kind of the same thing as when we say, hey, if you can't sleep, go open up the Old Testament and read it, and it'll put you to sleep. Maybe that's part of why he did this. Maybe part of it, though, is an inspiration that he got, a little subtle nudge or mention from the Spirit. He probably doesn't recognize it as a feeling from the Spirit. But the Spirit's probably telling the king, go read the records. Not telling him why to read the records, but just, hey, you know what? If you can't sleep, have them read the records to you. It's boring. It'll put you to sleep. So maybe that's his logical justification for the impression he got from the Spirit. So he says, bring it in here. Let's read these records. Read these records to me. I need something to help me fall asleep, probably. Verse 2, it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, 2 of the king's chamberlains, the keepers at the door, who sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? And then the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. So in reading of the history, come in here, read the history of what's been going on in my kingdom, what's been happening. Oh yeah, that was that conspiracy that my wife told me about. I forgot. It was Mordecai that told her about it. He discovered it. I forgot about that. Hey, what have we done, by the way, to help Mordecai out? Because he saved my life. And the servant says, nothing has been done for Mordecai. And he's like, oh my gosh, we haven't, I need to honor this. I need to do something for Mordecai. This is something important. Verse 4. And the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house, to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. So by this point, the king's going, who's here? Somebody's here to see me. And they're, oh, it's Haman. He's come in here to see you. Oh, okay. Hey, Haman, come here. Let's talk. Come in. So Haman's coming in thinking, oh, great, the king's going to let me talk. I gotta tell this story. I gotta find a way to convince the king to let me kill Mordecai, because I hate Mordecai. And the king is going, hey, Haman, come here. Let me ask you a question. You're a servant of mine. You're a trusted advisor, if you will. You know, he's put a lot of trust in him in the past. So let me ask you a question. Let me talk with you about something. Verse 5, and the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth at the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? So the king's going, come here, Haman, I got a question for you. Let me ask you a question here. I've got someone who I really want to honor, who I want to do something for, who's been a great servant of mine, who's helped me out. What should I do to honor someone who has honored me? Now Haman, this is verse 6, continuing on. Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to honor more than to myself? Now that's so logical for Haman. If he's drinking his own Kool-Aid so much, he's like, oh my gosh, the king wants to honor me. Oh, this is so cool. The king wants to do something. Well, what should I tell him? What should I tell him to do? Oh, if he's going to honor me, what would I want him to do? So this is what's going on in Haman's mind. Verse 7, and Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. So Haman's thinking, what would this do? He wants to honor me. Oh my gosh. So what does he ask the king to do? Put me on your horse. Put me in your robes. I want to be seen by the people as if I was the king. He's thinking, how can I convince the people to see me just as important as the king? I'm going to use this as an opportunity to elevate my political status in the kingdom by making it symbolic as if I am the king. I'm not just a king's servant, I'm symbolically like the king. I'm making myself equal with the king, is what Haman wants to do. He sees this opportunity. He's kind of forgotten the whole idea of killing Mordecai because he thinks the king wants to honor him. And so his pride has blinded him, and he thinks he's going to get this royal honor. He's not. The king is thinking about doing this to Mordecai, as we know. So this is going to be interesting. What's going to happen to Haman when Haman realizes that Mordecai is the person that the king wants to honor? This honor isn't going to go to Haman, but Mordecai, his, as far as Haman's concerned, his enemy. Holy cow. This is a crazy twist. Oh my gosh. There's actually a quote I want to put in here as well. This is Rasmussen wrote this in the Introduction to the Old Testament. He says, it was ironic that at that particular time the king availed himself of the services of Haman to gain from him a suggestion as to how to honor a certain deserving man. Haman didn't know it was Mordecai for whom he was suggesting honors at the very time he had come to get permission to hang Mordecai. And thus it was that Haman had the frustration and humiliation of doing for Mordecai what Haman had hoped was to be done for himself. Moreover, he had no opportunity to do what he had planned to do to Mordecai. Note that Haman's own wife had ominously predicted dire fate would befall him if his opponent be of the seed of the Jews. So that's what happens here, basically. So crazy. So Haman, again, he thinks he's going to use this as an opportunity to put himself up to be seen equal with the king. Verse 10, then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Now this, if this was a movie, I could imagine what they would do at this point. At this point, the cameras would be fixed on the king going, that's a great idea, Haman. Tell you what, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go and I want you to do exactly what you told me, but I want you to do it to Mordecai the Jew. And I'm sure the camera would spin right to Mordecai, right to Haman, and you'd see his face of shock, like, oh, what did you just say? Like, he can't believe that the king just said this. And it would be probably one of those shots where like the background and the person suddenly like separate from each other to kind of feel like you're kind of zooming in on Haman as he has this befuddlement look on his face like, wait, what just happened? It's not me. I'm not the one being honored. Wait, you want to honor Mordecai the Jew? Wait a minute here. I just told you to elevate Mordecai the Jew to make him look equal as the king? What the heck? Fireworks going off in Mordecai's mind. What just happened? But now he has to realize, I can't talk to the king about killing Mordecai because I just told the king how to glorify Mordecai. Oh, this is crazy. So what does he do? He's stuck. He is stuck. He has to do what the king says. Because by defying the king, he puts himself at odds with the king, which is not going to be a good favor, so he has to do what the king has said. So, verse 11, then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Oh man, this has got to be the worst day in Haman's life. He gets the royal robes, he gets the royal horse. He has to go to Mordecai, the guy he wouldn't even move out of his way the day before. He hated him and was plotting to kill him. He had to dress him up as if he was like the king. He had to put him on the king's horse. Then he had to lead the horse, telling the people, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. He had to glorify Mordecai. He had to do this. I'm sure he's like, thus shall it be done unto, he's probably like, oh, I don't want people to know I'm here to do this. And Mordecai's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And kind of like almost an in your face to Haman, because I'm sure he knew Haman hated him. And he's probably like, Haman's doing this? This is like a twist of fate. Talk about an Oedipus Rex type situation. If you're familiar with that play, and if you are, please put in the comments. I'd love to hear if you're familiar with the Oedipus Rex play. It's a non-Shakespearean play, but it's a really important one. It teaches a good principle of what these two are going through right now. Verse 12, and Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house mourning, and having his head covered. So again, Haman's pride has been destroyed. Oh my gosh. The worst day in his life, probably, and he wants out of there. Doesn't want to do anything. He brought him up. I'm out. I'm gone. I'm going to hide my head. I'm getting out of here. Verse 13, and Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. And then his wise men and Zeresh his wife said unto him, then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. So this is they're kind of prophesying a little bit here of, hey man, this is not going to go well with your idea of dealing against the Jews. Verse 14, and while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. So he still has to do day 2 of the banquet with the king and Esther. Oh man, this is crazy. He's like, oh crap, I still got to go talk to the king and the queen. Oh, talk about adding to my bad day. Man. Oh. All right, well, let's jump over to chapter 7 to see what happens at this second banquet with the queen and the king and Haman. And now that Mordecai has been elevated in society in a way and been seen as somebody who the king favors. We'll see you in the next chapter.